I still think that 99% of what will come out of that narrative, unfortunately, will be trash.
What I find interesting is that this right now is devoid of any catalyst behind it. Nothing has fundamentally changed if you compare a week ago to 2 months ago.
There's a lot of focus on mint. There's not a lot of focus on what comes after, which is basically just trade and gamble.
There needs to be a bullshit tax. I think the biggest downside of social media is that everybody is able to put out an opinion, but not bearing any responsibility of the consequences. There's no accountability because nobody has anything at stake.
I think people will still have retarded takes, even if they lose money.
I think we should pitch that idea to various really boring German family-owned small, medium enterprises.
Germany is exactly the wrong market for that. We will go to jail and they will definitely not even hear us out. Autistic crypto participants. How's it going, Max?
So our target audience, it's going great, Onur. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
been a long time. I've been on Vieques in Puerto Rico, sitting on the beach for the last 5 years, ever since I entered crypto. It's been the most extended period I've sort of taken a complete hiatus away from the industry. I mean, I looked at everything kind of every day, but it was with such carelessness. Whatever happens, happens. Stuff started pumping again, don't care. Stuff started dumping again, don't care. Rugged, don't care. It's just, you're in literal paradise on earth and you have other things to worry about.
Did you heal?
I definitely did. Where have you been the past month?
I've been in the trenches. I've been to Dubai, to Token 2049. And I've been vibe coding a lot, actually. And yeah, it's been good. I'm one of these people who prefers summerish weather in general, and like my
Same, summer supremacy.
Yeah, like my mood is heavily being affected by it. So in that sense, I've been good. Vitamin D tanks are filling up. And yeah, no, things have been good. Should I tell you a bit about Dubai?
Of course.
Okay, so I haven't been to conferences for a long time on purpose, deliberately wanted to focus, lock in, build. It's been nice to be around people. Maybe let me start with the city. So last time I was in Dubai before 2 weeks ago was 10 years ago. And it was literally skyscrapers in the desert. Super weird, obviously way too hot, and I didn't love it. This time, I was like, okay, everyone who's not in Dubai or one of these major cities is missing out big time. You feel the pulse of the city. Everywhere you go, there's business opportunities, there's people, there's deals being made. It's hard to describe. I don't want to use a lot of these bullshit terms, but in general, I feel the city things are moving faster. You know, there isn't this bureaucracy overhead. If you want to make a deal happen and you're somewhat trustworthy, you're going to make a deal happen. There's still like a lot of, I would say, sketchy people running around, like it's always been. But in general, it's changed a lot to the positive. I was positively surprised. It's still way too hot. You live from AC to AC, AC hotel, AC cab, AC venue. The 3 seconds you walk on the street, you'll literally melt.
Yeah, I experienced that half a year ago when I was there. You step out of a building or out of a car, you're dead within 3 seconds. It is so hostile to living. And it's interesting how a place like that turned out to be so vibrant and dynamic. I mean, it's devoid of any culture, of any aesthetic. You can't compare it to something like Milan or Rome or Paris, but it is clean, it is safe. You don't have outright criminal behavior on the streets, no degeneracy. People are there to do business. It seems like a locked-in place in that way.
Food is good. Like, if you want to eat and live healthy, you have access to amazing food. If you have like any hobbies, whether it's like martial arts or it's like diving, scuba diving, or anything else, there's a big chance that you will have access to pursuing your hobby and following your passion. Education is good. Everything is great, honestly. It's growing. It's a vibrant city. There's one thing I don't like about the city, which is there's no outside life going on. You know, imagine summer in Berlin, people hang out in parks. There's a random street musician popping up. People are just vibing in the park, having a beer. That doesn't exist because it's way too hot. It's the freaking desert still. Other than that, I think it's a decent city. Anyways, Token, it was good as always. I just wanted to get up to speed on where things are and what's been happening. I would say not so many builders. There's mainly still like BD people, marketers, VCs. I met a ton of auditors and market makers this time. So City was like full of market makers, auditors, OTC brokers. I'm not that deep into market making. So I think having these conversations with the people, understanding where their business opportunity lies, super interesting. Other than that, ecosystem wise, I think Solana is still where the music is this cycle. I've been hearing a little bit about Sui, Avalanche, Abstract, and I think everything else is still dead. Of course, Ethereum, there's some stuff going on, but 80 to 90% is happening on Solana. So that's why I don't want to belittle these other ecosystems, but it's just there's no leverage. There's no need to talk about them until proven otherwise. And I'm not in the business of figuring out which the next ecosystem is going to be and where it's going to emerge. So I think for me, it's much easier to just focus on where the things are happening today. And that is definitely Solana. But I think Sui would be the only other chain where I at least saw some small things happening and some teams building some stuff. But yeah, so it was good. It was good to catch up with people also.
Good to hear. Yeah, I've been not catching up a lot with the mood, just through the occasional Twitter scroll, and it seemed to be pretty down until I returned from the island last weekend. Even though prices have been rising, and they've been rising strongly. I mean, that's more than just a little relief rally, it seems. It's been up only for quite a few tokens. ETH still has a long way to go to recover all the downfall, but I mean, the strength in the price rise, it is impressive. Stuff like Fortcoin is up pretty well. Hyperliquid is close to all-time highs.
Yeah.
Solana has been doing well. Some of the memes have been resurging. Do you think this is the continuation of the bull market? Is it just a dead cat bounce? How would you interpret the current rise in prices?
Yes, I do think it's a continuation of the bull market. I never thought the bull market is over. I don't even necessarily believe in the 4-year cycle meta as we've seen it before anymore. I think this is good and bad. It's bad because even if you think about the cycle meta, every time it's going to have diminishing returns as everyone is expecting the same. And even if you look at the Bitcoin multiples, which is the Bitcoin halving and Bitcoin price was the determining factor for the 4-year meta. Even if you just look at that, it's been like diminishing returns for every new cycle. So that's why it's bad. But it's also good because I think we'll have new mini cycles and new mini metas because the ecosystem is much, much wider right now. So even if everything tanks 80, 90%, if you continue building within your like mini cosmos, I think it won't affect you too much, especially if you've been building something legitimate where things weren't just like randomly pumping 5,000%. So in that sense, I do think it's continuation. I mean, I'm just repeating what everyone else says, right? Like, we're going to have one more major leg, one more big pump. I personally don't think it'll go much into next year. If I were to bet, I would say it would be August, September this year.
What I find interesting is that this right now is devoid of any catalyst behind it. Nothing has fundamentally changed if you compare a week ago to 2 months ago. All the tariff fears have been out there. Then you had April 2nd, which marked the bottom. What we are seeing right now, it just seems to be a deep panicking of the markets because everybody was so uncertain in the early weeks of April. The global trade order is coming to an end, blah, blah, blah. And is it just people realizing that the nothing ever happens meme comes true? What is this? Is there a macro catalyst on the horizon that genuinely justifies another leg up until the end of the year? It's just a very weird timing. I'm still exposed long on the crypto markets. I never changed that even during the downturn because me too, I did not believe that the bull market would be over, but I must admit it does feel weird right now because nothing has fundamentally changed compared to a month or 2 months ago.
So to me, it's not a surprise for several different reasons. Firstly, the short-term downtrend we've seen was mainly triggered by the Trump administration's policies around tariffs. I'm oversimplifying on purpose, but that was the main driver. Now, if you think about the tariffs, there's basically two possible outcomes. One is Trump is going to stick to the tariffs stubbornly, and no matter what happens, he's going to enforce them to death. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is he's using tariffs as a negotiation tactic, or some people would say as a manipulation tactic in the markets to make some moves, or his close circle of friends benefit from it. As always, if you have access to information, it's very, very beneficial. Not to go too deep into conspiracy, or you think it's just like a short-term tool that he uses for whatever reason, right? I think everyone is believing the latter. Everyone is believing, okay, it's weird. There's some tactics behind it, whether it's smart or not. But in the long run, in order, like towards the midterms, and in order for the economy to flourish, obviously, like aggressive tariffs don't make any sense. So the second there are signs that the tariffs are nothing long term, the expectation was always that the markets will recover. And I think that's exactly what happened.
Having been into the US for the last month almost, you basically have a 50-50 divide. The people who are politically opposed to Trump, they view it as something completely stupid, completely thoughtless, there's no strategy in it, and he purposely wants to destroy the economy. And on the other side, the other 50% who are in favor of his administration, where he's playing 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D chess. And if you just look at what has happened, there's no consistent opinion on either of these sides from the market either. You have had, when the tariffs happened around a month and a half ago, a lot of people talking about the immediate reaction and the immediate sell-off is exaggerated. It's an overreaction. But the meta thought that many people extracted was, okay, while this immediate reaction is completely exaggerated, we must fundamentally question the ways we've been building global trade and relying on global trade for the past 30 years. That was the meta just a month ago. By now, it's just, we are all back to kumbaya. We have a trade deal with China. I think China is now putting only 10% tariffs on US goods, and the US is putting 30% on Chinese goods. I think that was announced on either Saturday or Sunday, if I remember correctly. So the one geopolitical opponent the US tried to isolate is now one of the first they have struck a trade deal with. And the entire idea of, okay, there's an elaborate strategy behind this, or Trump is trying to deliberately destroy the economy, neither of these things hold right now, because there's a complete confusion, and it could flip into one direction or the other within a second again.
Honestly, like, I don't know, and there's no way I can know. Like, there's no information I can acquire that would, I think, make me understand why things are happening. I can only say that it doesn't surprise me. So I generally try to not complicate things and try to keep things extremely simple. And I think, like, the tactics of I don't think it's a like master plan or strategy. I really think it's just a short-term tactic. But the tactic of creating chaos, fixing the chaos, and coming out of it as the hero is nothing new. I really think that's it. And especially people's even short-term memory basically doesn't exist. So even if the crisis would be going on for a few weeks or months and Trump ends up fixing it, I think people will have that in memory. And that's always been like the main thought, right? Like towards the midterms 2026, things have to look very good. So whatever's happening right now, it won't be as bad in a year from now. I think that's always been the sentiment. I still think it's too early to make judgments on whether the crisis has been completely solved or not. But I think in the long term, it doesn't matter. In the long term, we're both delusional optimists.
I think the thesis you put out that people only care about what happened in the short term, that applies to, in the context of US politics, to 2 to 3% of the swing voters. All the other ones, if you look at the Democrat side, there is simply zero coverage of anything positive related to Trump. He could have created the most beautiful stock market, the best stock market to ever exist, and CNN would have attributed it to Bidenomics. And the reverse is happening on Fox News. I mean, it shocked me when I was in the US again, and I thought it would have improved a little bit from when I've been there the last time, which was in 2019 and 2018. And I saw the first years of the first Trump administration. It got even worse. There is simply no coverage of anything good or anything bad, depending on which political side you're on and which media you consume. And there's a complete blanket attribution of either mistakes or successes to another side. What you really have to compete for are these 2 to 3% who are open to voting for either party in the US. Yeah. That was also a reason why I took a pretty big bet in 2024 on why Trump would win, because there were all of these people claiming it's a completely 50-50 race because all of these predictions and predictors, they cannot decide who is going to win. And I was thinking, okay, the only relevant fraction of the population you have to look at are the independents, the libertarians, and the swing voters. These are the ones who are going to decide the race and which mimetic image of which candidate is more appealing to these. And I bet against a couple of my friends in off-market bets because they were all giving me 50-50 odds, whereas on Polymarket, I would have had to buy the Trump win at 60 or 70 cents at some points in time. So that was almost a arbitrage, I'd say.
I was going to ask, were you the 10 million whale on Polymarket?
Unfortunately not. That was somebody from France, I think.
So there was, I think 2 or 3 weeks before the election, I don't remember, there was some final FUD where the turns have flipped. And I think it was close to 50-50 again. And I may or may not have made a move there. But I also remember the popular vote was very controversial because people were like, yeah, Trump is going to win. But the popular vote, probably no. He also won the popular vote. And you could buy 20 cents on a dollar.
That would have been a very nice bet, which I unfortunately didn't take. But I bet on a couple of swing states, though, and turned out right on every single one of them.
Nice, nice. I like the idea. So gambling, I'm not a fan of. But I like the idea of having skin in the game and putting your money where your mouth is. It makes it more credible.
There needs to be a bullshit tax. I think the biggest downside of social media is that everybody is able to put out an opinion, but not bearing any responsibility of the consequences. There's no accountability because nobody has anything at stake. And I think setting up bets also in peer-to-peer arguments with family members or friends about whatever issue, may it be politics, may it be medicine, may it be health, whatever it is, may it be astrophysics, just put some money behind your opinion. Yeah. And I think the instances of outright retarded takes would decrease by 90%.
I don't think so. I love the idea. I would love for that to exist, but I don't think that would reduce the amount of retarded ideas by 90%. But it's not a bad thing. I think like it would still be fire. But I think people will still have retarded takes, even if they lose money.
Yeah, but if you are suddenly forced to take responsibility for the outcome and it's going to hurt you financially, you will put much more thought into how to articulate and frame your argument.
That's the bull case. But even if you look at arguments today that people have, how many people try to steelman the other person's opinion and actually like are open to changing their mind, versus how many people just like push through their thought that they came into the argument with in the first place, and like no matter what you say, there's literally like no chance that you can change their mind. I would say that 90%, like it's impossible to change their mind. They're just too opinionated. Their ego is too big. Maybe like 10-20% of people you actually can change their mind with like sound arguments. If that thing would change it though, I would appreciate that.
Let's see what the tokenization and financialization of everything
should we build it?
Future.
We could build that.
We should build that.
That's interesting. Okay, let's figure that out later. Have you been following on-chain at all? What's going on?
A little bit. I mean, I've seen a bit of the meme resurgence, and speaking of financialization of everything, there seems to be a new trend out there called internet capital markets. Yeah. I just stumbled across it this morning.
Yeah.
Can you get me into the loop?
The TLDR. So let me let me start by saying it is a narrative that is mainly pushed by the Solana ecosystem and positioning Solana as the place to be for internet capital markets. But it's nothing major new. It's just like a repackaging of ideas that exist. So in that sense, it's good and bad. I would say it's ICOs 2.0, right? So what have ICOs done in 2017? It's basically they gave access to capital formation without all the hassle of like creating a legal entity, raising from VCs, building a PowerPoint pitch deck, blah, 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 blah. So what you had to do is like, you had to create a white paper. I think the amount of bullshit that came out of ICOs is probably the same that amount of bullshit that came out in PowerPoints and traditional VC businesses. The only difference was it was permissionless. So things were a bit more wild along the way. These things were valued at things that didn't make sense in between. In that sense, I do think that internet capital markets, it's still capital formation. The one twist that is being added now is instead of all these hot air ideas and meme coins, let's actually start valuing real startup ideas and real products. Do I buy that? No, because I think you can literally spend a week vibe coding an MVP, putting it out, and say, hey, it's an internet capital markets play. I'm a real builder here, which is good. It's probably better than a white paper, but I still think that 99% of what will come out of that narrative, unfortunately, will be trash. On the other hand, like if you have legitimate Web2 builders that want to join crypto, and instead of letting all this regulatory overhead of raising funds and giving private investors privileged access, just giving anyone that has access to the internet access to the thing that you're building, I think that's great. Another way to look at it is, if you think about universal basic income, it basically creates a welfare state. It's, hey, we're going to feed everyone fish. What you want to do instead is you want to give everyone equal access to opportunity and teach everyone how to fish instead of giving them the done meal, right? So in that sense, like internet capital markets, giving everyone who has access to the internet access to opportunities in an equitable fashion, I think is the main narrative. So no barriers of entry in terms of legal and regulatory requirements for early stage opportunities, continuation of tokenizing everything, tokenizing ideas, tokenizing attention. That's why we're seeing launchpads popping up left and right with more sophisticated features. For example, PumpFun also introduced creator sharing now, and Believe app has the same 50% creator sharing. What crypto enables anyway is a 24/7 mechanism to price anything, which I think is much better than traditional markets. And I would say that the composability of crypto, the fact that you can collateralize one idea and compose it with another idea, whether you use it for perp trading or for getting a loan or something else, still stands. So TLDR, long story short, internet capital markets are, I would say, the repackaging of existing ideas. But since the thinking has evolved, it does make sense to look at it from this angle, in my opinion.
I listened to a podcast with Kyle Somani. I think he was on Lightspeed on some episode from January this year, where he first talked about internet capital markets. And while I listened to that this morning, it was just the general Solana thesis that he has been holding up for around a year or two, or maybe longer. I mean, he obviously iterated on it consistently, and all the talking points about capital formation, democratic access, etc. But there was no single indication that this current meta of internet capital markets would improve or solve any of the existing incentive misalignments. I mean, the meta of democratizing everything, tokenizing everything, that was what Pump.Fund started with. That's what many of these decentralized social things started with, where you could tokenize your tweets or whatever. I think Base has been doing it around a month ago, where it's like you can tokenize like influencer content or whatever. It's just tokenize, 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 but there's no improvement, no new iteration of the underlying incentive mechanism. And that is the entire thing that crypto started out with around 10 years ago, where people started to devote a lot of thought into, okay, how can we improve the systems of Web 2 and traditional finance, where you have all of these adverse selection, all of these incentive misalignments. But what we've seen year to date is that everybody has just been extraction maxing. There's no genuine improvement on the status quo. How do you think the ICM narrative improves that or fixes that?
To your first point, extraction maxing will continue, regardless of what you do. Where there is money, there will be grifters and scammers. I don't think any primitive or tool can mitigate that sufficiently and sustainably. I don't think that's a bad thing. I genuinely believe that the Wild West and extraction maxing are pain points that we need to go through. And in the long term, it won't matter in the sense that, like, the money lost because of that will be irrelevant to the amount of innovation that came out of it. It's still bad. Like, it's still horrible, especially on Libra level, right? But that doesn't mean that we should stop. That's my point. I think we cannot stop. What I would say is not just the narrative has evolved, but also the tooling has evolved. If you look at the tooling, there's more, like Let's Bonk is another one, you know, it's another launchpad. Believe app is another one. Radium is launched. Their launchpad infrastructure, even. We have Pump Fun, who now has also their own swap and who now introduced creator fees. We have DAOs.fun, which is another platform if you want to like launch a DAO and manage a fund or build a product. So all of these things, by the way, happen on Solana. Like, I don't see the same amount and the same velocity in innovation in other ecosystems. That's why I think it's worth just focusing on that. And I think while we go through the pain of extraction maxing, these tools get better and better. And I do believe that at some point, there will be mobile apps that allow you to do all these things with a swipe of a button. And that level of convenience in conjunction with an internet connection is what it is about, right? So, long-winded way of saying, before you had to have privileged access and you had to had deep technical skill sets to be able to launch a product or even a smart contract on chain. Now you just have to have an internet connection and you have to press a button. I think we've come a long way in order to achieve that. And I think that's the essence of it. With everything else, 99.9% what will come out of it will be trash. So I think it's worth trying to find the 0.1%.
Have you seen anything non-trash on Believe app or in the general ICM meta?
Definitely. I mean, I don't want to comment the valuations and whether they're justified, but a few of the tokens that came out of Believe app are real businesses with revenue. And that's novel. Like, before you had white papers, PowerPoints, memes, which I think all of those things have value in itself. But now you have real businesses. The reason I think it's not as important, and that's maybe like why I take even this meta with a grain of salt, is none of the cash flows justify the valuations of even ICM token.
How is the ICM token connected to the equity or the cash flows of the businesses that launch them?
I don't think at all. I think today it's literally just like, you have to take my word for it. There are, however, solutions which kind of like help you to securitize your equity and bring it on chain and stuff like that. The thing is, these things come with complexity. I think what we're seeing in the meta right now, they're YOLOing it. I don't think there's any legally enforceable way where the token is actually tied to the real world business.
So is it just some useless software as a service companies launching their own meme coins, or how should I understand it?
I don't know. I mean, I think we're gonna have different flavors of it. Like, it's up to the creator, I would say, whether they're gonna do buybacks, whether they're gonna do airdrops, whether they're gonna do like revenue sharing. That's up to the creator. I don't think there's like an enforceable scheme. But this is the thing where I think like people start to complicate things. Like, this is V1. It's super rough. There's no like physical tie to the token. But I think like, if the model works generally, I think like the ties will come, the integrations will come. And I think at some point they will be legally enforceable. Like, at some point you have to in the process of creation, link it up to your thing, which is probably binding. But today, I don't think it works like that. I think it's literally just like pressing a button and tweeting about it.
So yeah, still a long way to go, I guess. On that note, do you think that we will see a shift towards emphasizing the fundamentals of coins more, or do you think that the next few months and quarters will be weighted more towards mimetic investing, as we've seen in November last year and I think March last year?
I think both. I don't think it's either or. It's not mutually exclusive. I think the mimetic investing and the speculation or casino has always been the number one use case of crypto. And like it or not, it will not go away. In contrast, the new meta, in the sense that it will be referred to as the internet capital markets phase of crypto, still has to prove itself. Like I said, it's nothing new. It's things and primitives that existed in the past, like ICOs, like launchpads, like creator sharing. However, I think the packaging and the fact that real non-crypto businesses start to launch coins is new. And I think the most important thing here is actually the fact that fear of regulatory backlash, especially because of the Trump administration. I mean, Trump literally launched a meme coin, and there's rumors he's going to launch another one. I think that is probably the most important factor that triggered the rise of these type of initiatives of businesses. The biggest problem that I see is when everything is said and done, when everything is over, when the bear market hits, what are these businesses going to do with their tokens? While as an anon Milady PFP Twitter, you could just disappear, even if it's not a good look. The real business that ties a token to their business, I mean, I'm sure some of them will just like delete the tweets and like act as if the token never happened. But I'm very curious how that will happen and how that will kind of change the things. Because let's be real. The biggest issue with launching a token is everyone holds you accountable for the rest of your life. Like if you're the founder of a chain, the pressure on them, even if they leave the project after 8 years, is still on. So either you like build up enough resilience and you don't care, like Dan Larimer, or you have to find a graceful exit. Something like, I gave back my token allocation, I burnt my tokens, blah, 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 right? So, right, I think that's going to be interesting. That's why I'm actually very bullish on the idea of post-token launch tooling, in the sense of whether you want to do a buyback, whether you want to do a migration, whether you want to destroy this token, I don't want it to exist anymore. That infrastructure doesn't exist yet. There's a lot of focus on mint. There's not a lot of focus on what comes after, or just basically just trade and gamble.
So just a tooling suite for the token economy for every stage that happens right after the launch.
Yes, and I think where things are strong is infrastructure for launch and infrastructure for trading or gambling. I think that's where things are strong. I mean, we literally only have burn your tokens, and liquidity positions get thicker because of the fee accrual as the only two mechanisms post-token launch. Other than that, you can only sell your tokens. I mean, we do have mechanisms to lock your tokens and implement some vesting. Again, we do have tools to burn tokens, and we do have mechanisms in place that make liquidity positions thicker just because of the way fee accrual works, for example, in Radium LP positions, LPs. So yes, I do think, especially if you tie it to a real world business and all the examples that I mentioned, do a buyback. I mean, of course, you could just go to a DEX and press the buy button. Maybe it's as simple as that. Or do some form of redistribution, whether it's an airdrop. And again, there are tools for airdrops as well. It's just not as explored as tools for minting and trading.
Yeah, I'm quite curious to see where that meta goes. I mean, it seems as if the entirety of crypto Twitter is currently gathering around it. Even some of the traders who've been away for a month, 2 months, 3 months are suddenly coming back talking about this stuff. So that is something to pay attention to. There's a strong social signal that this is gaining traction. However, I mean, I briefly glanced over the Believe app thing. What I've seen there, it does not really convince me. I think there's this furniture dupe thing where first I thought, okay, they're producing designer furniture at a fraction of the price. Funnily enough, I had a similar conversation with my uncle who I was visiting on Vieques because he's an interior designer. And I I helped him a bit with some stuff here and there, and I saw the prices of the furniture they order for themselves and for their clients, and it's insane how much the stuff costs. I mean, basically for a piece of wood and like some pillow on top of it, you're paying 5,000, 8,000, sometimes 50,000 bucks for a sofa. You pay 35,000 for a mattress because it has horsehair in it or something. That's outrageous. And I was thinking to myself, how is it possible that this stuff is costing so much money? I mean, this should be hyper commoditized because there's not much of like engineering sophistication going into it. I mean, obviously there's a science to it, there's some art to it, but it is not like crafting a Hennessy Venom or Bugatti Chiron car engine where you have to pay attention to every meticulous detail where we have thousands of components interacting with each other. It's a block of wood. It's a couple of like 4 by 6 inches things. You just have to like glue together or whatever.
Okay, so do you think a Bugatti Chiron is worth 4 million USD?
No.
Okay.
I was just using that as a comparison because at least you have a little more engineering. Or take some very sophisticated watches. Are they worth the price in terms of both materials combined with the human labor input? No. But I think the markup compared to something like furniture for these kind of things is a little less.
I think it's exactly the same.
Same
Bugatti
mechanism,
Bugatti is just a glorified Audi.
Well, it's a glorified VW Passat W8 engine. You just glue two together, and suddenly you have a Bugatti.
Exactly. I looked at both of these. I think there's like dupe, there's buddy.
Yeah, and this dupe thing, it doesn't even produce furniture. It's just a price aggregator, and it's valued at 50 million.
So valuation never made sense in crypto. Since I joined the space, valuations never made sense in the sense that you cannot use traditional mechanisms and compare it to how we value things in crypto. It's a lazy way of saying, like, I don't know why it's valued at where it's valued. It's just speculation. But I think there's value in aggregating that information. Think of Alibaba or AliExpress. Before that, you had to go to extremely weird portals. If you were lucky, you had one in your language. Otherwise, it was in Mandarin and you had to Google Translate it. You had to go through PDFs and lists or fly to China to find suppliers and vendors for something. Alibaba made that accessible to anyone. And AliExpress even a step further. They added layers of convenience. So in that sense, I do think there's value in dupe. Yeah, I do think there's value in aggregating that information.
I'm not trying to deny the value in that, but I was thinking, okay, we have now entered the stage of tokenizing real-world businesses. Why is there no real-world business that produces real-world things? Like, why don't you just build cheaper furniture that is designed in a similar way? Why don't you do a similar thing to what Mark Cuban did with all of these off-brand or generic brand medications in the US? That's a genuinely useful product. I mean, why don't they just start tokenizing construction companies or whatever on Believe?
Now that you say it, imagine a woodworker or a carpenter, single person company or something, family business, launching a coin on Belief and then producing goods themselves. I think it could be a runner that would run to billions. Like, people would love that as a story. The problem is,
I think we should pitch that idea to various really, really boring German family-owned, small, medium enterprises.
Germany is exactly the wrong market for that. We will go to jail and they will definitely not even like hear us out. But, you know, this is exactly the point. Like, so we've come a long way from having to have legal entities, SAFTs, agreements, having to have technical expertise, interact with RPC nodes to deploy our smart contract, all the way to I do a tweet or I press a button and my token is live. There's still huge information asymmetry. I don't think all these small family businesses understand the implications of doing that. And I do think there's still risk attached to it. And that's why I don't think the majority of those people will do it. However, the people who will do it I think will have a strong affinity to tech or crypto. They either hold Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, or have been following the space for a long time. They're probably young and willing to take a risk. And that's why they do it, right? If we set good precedent here, and there's a few examples of changing the trajectory of real world businesses, I think that would be a great catalyst for things, and that could really change the game. But until then, I don't think all these construction companies and other companies are describing that build real world things will launch their tokens. Although I would love to see some.
I genuinely hope I am wrong here, but I do think until proven otherwise, the whole ICM narrative will just turn out as everything else did prior. The whole meme coin meta, the whole AI agents meta, it's just max extracting, going to be short-lived. Right now is the time to catch a runner or two, or maybe 3 or 4, ride them up, but take profit. Don't think that like some furniture aggregator will be sustainably valued at $60 million or whatever price it's going to run up to.
I think it's gonna go up more than that.
Unicorn status?
I mean, again, does it make sense? No. Will we see unicorns coming out of this meta? And my closing thoughts on this, it will fade, just like the ICO meta faded, 100%. I still think that we need new metas to keep things alive and evolve the thinking around certain things. And the small percentage that will stick from the meta, I think are worth it. Old metas burn and go away, and I think it's really, really hard to revive them. So it's much cheaper to just come up with a new meta, which is fresh and not burned. One more thing on the meme coins. I don't think the meme coin meta will ever go away, and I don't think it ever went away, in the sense that since Bitcoin launched, it was nothing but a meme. And I still think it and everything else is still a meme. So the little piece of tech you put behind it, I don't think makes it not a meme. You know what I mean? So in that sense, I think the meme coin meta is, you could frame it as the attention meta or the belief meta. And I think that will.
On the meme coin side of things, since you're a little more active in the trenches, do you think that we will see a revival of all the existing memes that have been around since last year, or do you think that the majority of the run-up will be captured by completely new ones?
No, I think we actually saw a revival. I mean, Bonk Guy revived Peanut and Fartcoin. We saw a 6 or 7x from the bottom of Mudang, now hitting 300 million market cap again. Bottom dead, I think 40, 50. All the Murat list meme coins are back 3, 4x from the lows. So they're already back. The thing that most people, I think, don't understand is it's not so much about the meta, but you have to go a step deeper into the selection of the actual products, in this case, of the actual tokens. So the meme coin meta coming back doesn't mean that your bag will X overnight, because you may hold something K market cap that was never really relevant. You know what I mean? So those things, I'm very skeptical. I don't think that they will come back. If something ran to billions before and dumped to 100 million market cap, I think there's a very high chance that that will come back. And many people have high incentives to bring it back. I mean, again, the devil is in the detail. You have to understand, are these communities still active? What's the atmosphere like? What's the vibe like? What's happening in the background? Are there still like market makers, stuff like that? So there's a lot of details, but I think it's not so much about the meta. It's more about the project at the end of the day. Whether you position it as meta A or meta B, I think shouldn't be that important. But short version, yes, it will. Some will come back, but only 1% of the good ones.
Show your bags?
No.
Not too bad.
I don't have any in the ICM meta because it's still very early, and I'd rather wait for a dip to make some moves or just be sidelined. Honestly, I'm happy to be sidelined. I'm very comfy in my
spot.
Comfy and spot, exactly. I'm not too worried.
All right. I think it was great catching up. I think the hope dies last that something good is going to emerge out of ICM. Do you have any last words, any takeaways, any outlook for the next weeks?
Remaining bullish. I do think we will see another washout, shakeout. I think towards June, July. And then I think August, September, we're gonna have the last leg, the main leg, the parabola.
It's interesting to see how the seasons this year are sort of reversed, because the summer months have been usually pretty bearish for crypto, but now we've seen a stark price decline in February, March, and April, and now suddenly May has offered quite a bit of upside. So yeah, I personally, I remain pretty bullish BTC. I think the Bitcoin thesis has not changed over the past 6 months to me. Cautiously bullish the other alts I'm holding. Somewhat uncertain about meme coins, but yeah, still exposed pretty long.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. Speak soon.
See you later.